Right, this is a interesting story. I cannot, and I'm not going to pronounce this name. My, you know, dyslexia is quite bad. Mobs attack women near India Hindu temple. Many of the protesters against women entering the temple are women themselves. So I don't know if these are the women trying to enter, um, or these women are against these other women trying to get in. Crowds of angry Hindu devotees have prevented women from entering one of Hinduism's holiest temples, despite a, a historic Supreme Court ruling. Here we go. You see, the courts have no business in getting involved in religious matters, because the same thing could happen here in the UK with marriages. Although we have gay marriages, which is now equal to those of heterosexual marriage, one of the rulings when gay marriage was proposed, it was not going to force churches to accept gay marriages in the churches themselves, or any of the religious, Hindus, Muslims, Jewish, uh, Catholic, Protestant, Anglican, etc., etc. They were not going to be forced to um, perform marriages for homosexual couples in churches. So now I think that the churches are still they don't have to um, you know perform this function. So marriages, I didn't have any problems with it. Civil marriages as well, in government buildings that were owned by the government, built by the government, no problem. I have no problems with they can do whatever they want as long as they are, separate from religious institutions and are not trying to force religious institutions to perform um, same-sex marriages in their institutions. I mean, there are Christian women, uh, Christian people who used to do civil marriages in town halls and whatever, and but there have been cases where I think a Christian woman didn't want to perform do the gay marriage, because she didn't believe in it, and she was either suspended or sacked from her job. So in that instance, if you work in an in a government institution that is not, is it civic marriages, um, civil marriages, or whatever they call them? They're not religious marriages. They're performed in town halls or in government institutions. That's fine. I didn't have any problems with civil partnerships being performed in town halls. Those are government institutions. The same thing with the marriages. Again, as long as they're performed in non-religious environments, that's fine, not a problem. What you do is entirely up to you. But here we have now exactly what people were fearing, not in this country, but in India, a a very religious and devout country. A uh, um, a Supreme Court has ruled that they must allow these women into these churches, sorry, into these temples, even though there are people who are saying no, we're not going to allow it. So they're being forced, and now this is the result. Crowds of agitated protesters attacked female devotees, many of whom turned back as a result. Not surprised. Several people, including an old woman, were injured as crowds threw stones at vehicles and attacked police officers. What do you expect? The particular temple has historically been closed to women of menstruating age. This is a tradition. This is something that they've done for years, and apparently, when I read through that, other churches, other sort of temples, I keep calling them church, I apologise, temples have practiced that to a degree. This particular temple, I believe, regardless, doesn't allow women into the actual temple between a certain age. Other temples, if you are menstruating, you're not allowed. But if you're not, then that's fine. There's a less of a strict rule. But here we have these people now trying to force their way into these churches, temples. God, I keep saying churches. Into these temples, rather than allowing, if they're going to, in time, maybe 10, 20, 30, 50, 100, maybe 1,000 years from now, they may decide to allow women in uninterrupted without any problem. That should be entirely up to them. Okay, that should be entirely up to them. Hinduism regards, and this is Hinduism regards menstruating women as unclean and bars them from participating in religious rituals. So all you have to do is just don't go there. If they won't let you in, there's you don't, just don't go there. It's as simple and as pure as that. But while most Hindu temples allow women to enter as long as they are not menstruating, the particular temple, I can't pronounce the name, was unusual in that it was one of the few that did not allow women in a broad age group, to enter at all. So there are other temples that women can go to, that don't have the strict rules. Like nuns. Men can't enter a nunnery because it's specifically for women. So what's the problem? Monks, again, it's strictly for men. So what's the problem? I don't see what the problem is. So as I said, you've got nunneries. Men are not allowed to live there unless with the express permission from the nuns. If, for instance, they need somewhere to stay for a night or two or whatever, they may allow them to stay in a certain part of the grounds. But on the whole, you can't live and sleep in a nunnery on a permanent basis. So I don't see what the problem is. This was overturned by the Supreme Court last month, with judges observing that the right to practice religion is available to both men and women. Yeah, of course, women can practice religion how they want in their homes. If they want to build their own new temple specifically for women, I'm sure there won't be a problem as long as they pay for it themselves, and women can go there and they can practice their own version of Hinduism. Build your own temples if you are being restricted. Build your own temples. I'm sure that many of you can gather enough money to build your own temples. Okay, no one's going to buy a piece of land, build your own temples, and so that women can go there. You've got to start from somewhere. People will say, "Oh, why can't they start from there?" They don't have to. That doesn't necessarily. If they say as a community, and they say no, this is our tradition. Okay, this is how we live. Then the courts shouldn't be getting involved in religious freedom. Okay, women are free to practice their religion how they want. They can set up their own temples, and they should do. The temple didn't. The temple did open its door as directed by the court ruling. Yep, Fine. However, not a single woman was able to enter because of the protesters. So the people have spoken and said, you're not getting in. Fuck the so-called Supreme Court. We are the people. This is our temple. And you cannot tell the people what they should do if they don't want, people to go in. The women are protesting as well as the men. Okay, the women are protesting as well as the men. Some would say that they're being forced, blah, blah, blah. But as I said before, you have nunneries that specifically, are women only. So I don't see what the problem is here. A mob searching for women. As the day got hotter, the protesters got more agitated. They gathered around a fork in the road, blocking the road, looking for women of menstruating age. A huge roar would go up if they found someone. Some of the women we saw had to be protected by the police. Cheers would go up as buses and cars turned around. Good. The mob then turned on journalists. Good. Seemingly in the belief that they hadn't had a fair hearing in the national press, although the targets appeared to be women. We'd put our cameras down as we had been told it had become dangerous. We saw one female journalist getting attacked. We saw another reporter's car had been smashed. Our car was bottled. It was an intimidating atmosphere for journalists. One can only imagine what it was like for any woman wanting to attend the temple. The protesters also include many women. This needs to be underlined. They have participated in rallies, blocked roads, and checked vehicles heading towards the temple to see if they contain women between 10 and 50. So this is what you get when you now try and force a religion via the government, and you've only got yourselves to blame. Every year, millions of male. Now, this is what happens. Every year, millions of male devotees trek up a steep hill to visit the shrine, which is believed to be about 800 years old. 800 years old. They undertake a rigorous 41-day fast before they begin the pilgrimage. Nothing at all to eat. Really? Right. The campaign to allow women into the temple gathered momentum in 2016 after a protest by female bastard students. So there you go. Feminist bastard students. The feminazi are now targeting, religious temples. And this is what we're saying, people. This is what feminism does. Feminism is not resting. Feminism sees this as a war, as a battle, and it will continue to go on until it has achieved a matriarchal society across the world. That is what feminism is about. With the white female at the top of the tree. Which the white female is at the top of the tree as it is. Okay, she's looked after, cosseted, has all the privilege, white female privilege. When they talk about privilege, white privilege, we are talking about white female privilege. That is what feminism is about. That is what its aim is. A matriarchal society where women are from top right through in all positions of authority, where they will be in charge. They will be the ones who administer instructions. Plain and simple. So these bastards, female students, are the one that have caused this problem. And if they, you know, they need to be held responsible if people start getting killed. Seriously, they need to find these bastard students and hold them to account to what's going on. You know, they were outraged by the temple chief's statement that he would allow women to enter only after a machine was invented to test if they were pure, meaning that they weren't menstruating. Okay. Now you can see state whatever he's saying is silly or stupid. Um, it's regardless. I mean, the point is this tradition has been there for this particularly, you know, and they're just not allowing it happen. Whatever authorities say, they didn't want women to distract the temple deity. So they don't want women to distract the temple deity. You know, whoever Azid, who's so this particular bit. Let's have a look. Let's see who this twat is. There you go. Here's the witch. Here we go. Uh, discriminates against women on a public health issue. Here we go. This is the Burns, the latest in Burns bras for fun. Well, listen up, people. Bras were not invented by men. Bras were invented by women. The bra was invented by an American woman, I think in 1920, 1930, when she got sick and tired of the constraints of the corset. So she got rid of the whale bones that were in the corset and just cut it up and made a bra out of it. There you go. So the bra was invented by a woman, not man. I mean, there are some men who need it for the old man boobs, but here we go. So this lunatic, here's the lunatic. Let's see. Here it is. Happy to bleed. Here she is. Entitled Old Witch. Happy to bleed. Here we go. Is it the same person? It's like two different people. God almighty, it keeps changing. Yeah, that one's. Don't know who this one is. Is that the same person? Anyway, it doesn't really matter. The point is, there's said lunatic. Looking for to make a name. There we go. There we go. Some bitch has got feminism there. Feminist, yeah, we know you're a hag. And here we've got a few of the aspiring lesbians. These are twins, are they? Okay, sorry, I didn't realise at the time. So yeah, very interesting. So getting back to here, so this is the particular twat that decided to do this campaign, who started the campaign, told the BBC at the time that there was no right time to go into a temple and that women should have the right to go wherever they want to and whenever they want to. But the point and the fact of the matter is that they've told you can't go into this temple. So unless you want death on your hands, I suggest you go to another temple and find another place that you can go in any time you want. They've stated no, and they won't be bothered because the people that go into that temple are geezers, and they'll be quite happy. They're not bothered whether there's women there or not. They will go there to pray for their own situation. Now, some people will say that's not very particularly loving, but that's their religion. It's got nothing to do with me. Okay, And it also has got nothing to do with the so-called Supreme Court making this stupid judgment. You know, here we go. Here we go. Petitioners who appealed to the Supreme Court to lift the ban said that this custom violated equality guaranteed under India's constitution. They added that it was prejudiced against women and their rights to worship. Women, no, women can worship. Go and build your own temples. Gather your own money. You've got the internet now. That woman could start up a Patreon or something like that. Say, we want to build a Hindu temple where women can go anytime they want. They can design it, they can build it, they buy the land, you name it. They can do whatever. They can start their own new religious group. 800 years ago, that temple was built by somebody. So why can't they? They have the right to do that. Get the money and build their own religious temple for these women who want to go anytime they want. That's fine. But this particular one, they don't want to, and they should not be forced to. And I'm afraid, listen, I think this is going to end up seriously badly for some people, and it's not going to be one of two things is going to happen. They won't give up that temple because I think what these protesters are hoping is that these guys will walk away and leave that, say, right, we won't worship here, and they'll go and build their own temple and they'll take it over because that's what they do. That's what feminists does. They don't build things for themselves. They want everybody to build it for them so that they can just walk in and take it over. And it must be built to their standards. You know, it's not about equality. This is nothing about equality. This is about feminist power grab. This is about feminists going for power. Supporters of the ban urged that the practice had been in effect for centuries, exactly, and there was no need to change it now. Okay, supporters of the ban argued that the practice had been in effect for centuries and there was no need to change it now. I mean, because at the end of the day, what is this actually stopping women from doing? This is not this is not the same as stopping women from getting equal pay, the same pay. This is not about women being paid the same. This is about a place of worship that has a particular. I mean, look at the Jews. Jewish people in the synagogues separate men and women. So women are on one side, men are on another side. You know, what's the problem? Nothing at all. That's how they run their religion. Okay, and so what's going to happen next? Are we going to get feminist bastards going into synagogues? They wouldn't dare. They may do, but it will work out badly for them in the long term. It will work out badly for them in the long term. This is the third religious site in India where women have gained the right to enter through judicial intervention. So, again, but I'm wondering whether it's actually working in these places for women. Courts had earlier directed officials at the Hindu temple, I can't pronounce it, and the Muslim Haji Al Shrine, both in the western state of whatever, to allow women inside. So let's see how that went. Okay. Trustees put the ban in place in 2011, arguing that allowing women near the tomb of a revered saint was a grievous sin in Islam. Dozens of women enter the inner sanctum of a historic mosque in India on Tuesday after winning a bitter legal battle to overturn a ban on female worshippers. I wonder how this will go down in Saudi Arabia. I don't think this would be, certainly not at the moment. The Hajj Ali Trust agreed last month to lift the ban on women entering I can't remember, on a off the coast of Mumbai after a group of female protesters launched a legal case. So these are, again, we've got feminist bastards. Feminist bastards. As I said to you, this is what the feminists are are about. And I'll tell you this: what's going to happen is that in the long term, especially in the West, men are very men. No, I'm not talking about menginas. I'm not talking about soya boys. There are men who are looking at the MGTOW movement now and seeing and realizing what's going on, and with the Me Too as well coming about and accusing every man under the sun and expect every man to be guilty before um, being proven innocent, because that's what they want. The feminist movements want every man, when they're accused, to be guilty, seen as guilty, first and foremost. Okay, first and foremost, to be seen as guilty. That's it. Before they can be proved innocent. So once they're guilty, they go straight into prison before a trial occurs, and all this, the nonsense that's occurred. If we go down that route, then the West will be lost. Plain and simple. There will be there will be a war, and there will be a battle in the distant future. It's not one that women will win. They won't win. They won't win this, because men will become more and more bitter about what's going on. And we're already seeing marriages in the West getting lower and lower and lower, because the 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 shaming tactic that women used to use in the past. Oh, he doesn't want he doesn't want to commit. That was a shaming tactic that was used on men. He doesn't want to commit. He refuses to commit. Men now are standing up with pride and saying they are not getting married. There are many men out there who are not having relationships. They are pumping and dumping, or they're paying for prostitution, and that's it. Or they're going abroad for their relationships, to other parts of the world where there's none of this nonsense. So, this is the situation. Here we go. The trustees put the ban in place in 2011, arguing that allowing women near the tomb was the tomb of a revered saint was a grievous sin in Islam. And then this campaigning bitch called a victory for women's rights and said it would set up a strong precedent for similar cases. We are very happy the ban against women entering into shrine was lifted, she said. Credit must be given where it's due. The trustees ensured our visit to the inner sanctum of the mosque was peaceful. We even had a tea with them after the visit. So this Haji is one of Mumbai's most recognizable landmarks, and receives tens of thousands of Muslims, Hindus, and tourists every week. The mosque is accessible via a castaway at low tide. It was built in memory of a wealthy 15th century Muslim merchant who gave up his worldly possessions and went on a pilgrimage to Mecca. Women in India have been intensifying their campaigns to be allowed to enter a string of Hindu temples and other religious sites. Hundreds of women staged a protest march uh, to a particular temple in January, leading to the High Court in Mumbai to strike down a ban against women entering the shrine there. Um, but it doesn't say what's the situation now. That was 2016. So it'd be interesting to know, you know, let's have a look at this as well. Right, are women allowed? Let's have a look. In a landmark judgment in 2006, Bombay High Court asked this particular government to ensure that women are not denied entry to any temple. Okay, a year after breakthrough moment. Here we go. A year after women activists, that's lesbian feminist bitches, let me just see. Successfully campaigned to enter the sanctum of the particular shrine. Local women are backtracking to the tradition of staying away from the idol. Okay, let's read this. This is quite interesting. So these women bitches activists went there to cause problems. Local women are backtracking. Now, obviously, they might, their husbands are probably saying, "Hey, you better not be going there, my dear. Otherwise, there'll be trouble for you." Uh, Women entered the sanctum and offered prayers in a move that broke all gender scripted, whatever that means. Right, exactly a year ago, many in the country cheered the daring of whatever it is who led women activists from I can't pronounce the name to make history by breaking a 6-decade-old tradition and enter the sanctum of the temple. An important landmark in the movement for women's emancipation in India, the incident triggered similar campaigns at other famous shrines in the country where women have been prohibited from going into the sanctum. The campaign brought the particular shrine into national focus and almost doubled the number of devotees visiting. A year later, not much has changed on the ground as the achievement of women activists is being reversed, not by men but by women from the temple town. Locals are back with their age-old practice with women still staying away from the deity, a tradition they still consider should be followed by all. None of us from the district have climbed the platform and touched the deity. We don't oppose any women coming from outside and entering into the inner sanctum, but why should we be forced to break the tradition? Anita, whatever her name, Shetty, head of the Temple Trust. So, so you got these feminist bastard slags came there to cause trouble and consternation, and yet the local women who have their own minds, most of them, who are not being pressurized by their husbands, are following tradition. They're quite happy not to have to go to the shrine and touch it. They won't do it. The locals believe women do not offer worship at the shrine owing to a belief that about harmful vibrations emanating from the Lord himself. Okay. The woman, however, has relented a bit, as last year, after being elected the head of the trust, she had made it clear that she would ensure the custom remains unbroken. As head of the temple trust, I will fight till my last breath to defend the centuries-old tradition, she had then said. So this is what, right. Unhappy about local women reluctant to enter the inner sanctum, activists say these women are under pressure from local men who never wanted the tradition to be broken. Exactly, precisely. You know, they didn't want it to be broken. You see, a lot of things that are going on in society, you see it now in India, you see it in parts of the West. It's men's traditions that are being broken. In Scotland, there was a men's only golf club that voted narrowly to keep women from joining the club. They said, no, it's still a men's club. And the First Minister of Scotland, I can't her name, I can't forgotten her name, um, got pissed and made it very clear, made a threat to them. Basically, if they didn't open, their doors to women at some point, um, something would happen. I don't know I can't remember what the threat was, but I wouldn't be surprised if she puts in place to take their license away. Even though this is I think it's one of the oldest golf clubs in the world. Okay, I mean, if it was a women's only, like the Women's Institute, the Women's Union in the United Kingdom is a women's only club, and it's been going for 70, 80 years. It's been going quite a long time. Tony Blair was invited, or he invited them, I think, to Downing Street. I think he's been to their institution on invitation. I think was he called an honorary woman? I don't know. But the point is that it's okay to have female-only institutions, nunneries. And women's gyms are quite prevalent. I'll tell you a story. Working when I worked for my company, BT, that's who I worked for. I was doing a job installing a system, and all the people that were doing work in this gym were the electricians, the plumbers, the plasterers, the painters, all geezers. But this gym was going to be a women's only gym. Women's only gym. Okay? So all the people that were doing the work there were guys. The gym was going to be a women's only gym. So I was parked in the car park. Across the road was a petrol station. I don't know if they had a toilet. I didn't go and check, but I needed to use the toilet, and it was around 3 o'clock. And I was going to carry on working till about 5 o'clock, because until I finished, which was 5 o'clock, and then drive up home. And this was up in Camden, very popular area with the so-called hip people. And I needed to use the toilet, for a pee. So I came out of the room where I was installing the system, and I said to the girl, who was probably about 22, typical 22, 23. So, but I didn't expect anything other than, because I didn't think of feminism. I wasn't thinking of feminism back then. I did notice that this was a women's gym, only gym, and I did sort of think, was starting to think, why is there only a women's gym? Because I remembered back there was a time in America, the gold gyms, that banned women. It was a men only gym, and there was in the 70s there was a massive process about it. Blah blah blah. They trying to force them to open their gyms to women. And that took me back. My mind took me back to that era. And so I went to the front desk and I said to the girl, "Excuse me, is there a toilet I can use, please?" And the first thing that came out of her mind straight away was, "This is a female-only gym. We do not have any facilities, um, for men. You can use the petrol station if you need to use the toilet." I said, "Oh, really?" By the way, she didn't hesitate. She was really on the ball, and I could see this nasty feminist evil face. And I stood there and I said, "Really? Okay, no problem." Turned, went back into the room, packed up my bags of all my tools, put them into my van. So I had a few bits and pieces, my ladders, and took them put them into my van, and came back in. And as I came back in to pick up one piece, the woman who was in the female manager saw me taking my, going back into the room, and she sort of said, "Oh, how's things getting on with the installation of the telephone system?" And I said, "Well, it's not too bad. I've just started." I said, "I'm just off back to my office because I need to use the toilet." And it was in the hall, the area where the girl was standing behind the counter, I should have said. And she'd come just past the counter to where the room was. And so I'd come out standing, and I said loudly, "I've been told I can't use the toilets in the premises because this is a women's only gym. I've been told to use the toilet across the road at the petrol station. So therefore, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back to BT, to my office it was then in Moorgate, to use the toilet there. So I will be back here tomorrow." I said, "When you open, I think it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. That's when I'll carry on installing the system." Now, with this woman being much older, she must have been about 38, coming up to 40. She just laughed and said to me, to my face, she said, "Ignore her, come here, let me take you to the toilet." And we went up the stairs, and she said, just before we got there, she said, "Just knock on the door and make sure that none of the ladies are using the toilet. You can use this one." I said, "Oh, right." So thank you very much. So I knocked on the door again, and then used the toilet. Common sense. That's all it required, was common sense. And this is the problem that you get with women, especially young women. They are devoid of common sense. And so, because of that, I was able to carry on doing, a couple of more hours and carried on, with the system, which made a huge difference because come the next day, I was ready. The system was finished and ready to go because all the cabling had been done by an electrician. But this is an example of feminism at work. Now, this was in 1996, 97, quite a few years ago. you know, Another quick example: a friend was working in an office again in the city of London, and he told me of when he was installing a system in the corner of the room, and there was this. It was an office of about 6 women, and the business was owned by a woman. And suddenly, a woman he hadn't seen had come in, and then this woman started to say, "God Almighty, men are complete utter bastards. They're real pigs. They're nasty people." She just started saying, and these girls were giggling, thinking it was really funny. And my friend, who is white, Greek, in the corner, turns to look at this harpy of a lesbian feminist, probably. She must have been a lesbian. For her to say the things, it was just really derogatory about men. So he walked from where he was working, went to the back room where the woman's the female who owned the business knocked on the door. I said, "Can I have a word with you?" And so she said yes. He said, "One of your female staff has just walked into the premises and is saying some really nasty derogatory things while I am in your office working. And he said, I'm going to point this out to you. If she continues to say what she says, which I find offensive, I will leave. Simple as that. I will pack my bags and I will go." So the woman said, "Don't worry, leave it with me and I'll have a word with her." So he leaves, goes back, and there's big hilarity as he walks back in. She then calls the woman in question into the office, and he can hear, "What kind of behaviour is that? Blah, blah, blah." Giving her a dressing down. Woman comes back into the room and just says one word. Well, not 2 words. "Big baby." Which he heard. But then she went to a table and got on with what she had to say. A couple of the girls went scurrying over to ask her what would happen, and they whispered amongst themselves. But this is the kind of thing that is happening if you go into female-only offices, if you're a guy. I mean, sometimes it depends. It's not always. But I always do, I must admit, I always tighten up if I go into a female-only office. Because I know that at some point someone is going to say something, and they usually do say something. But you have to be ready and quib back and say something as derogatory, if not more than what they're saying. So, sorry, getting back to, again, I'm waffling on. So, tradition trumps court. Exactly. The courts can say whatever they like. And maybe over time, 5, 6, 7, whatever years, these women will be allowed to go in. But they need to do this organically in their own way. You can't have outside agitators, lesbian feminists, coming from outside of a district into someone else's district and telling them this is the way you need to behave because we're telling you. This is what feminism is about. It's about telling people, instructing people, especially women who are less educated than these lesbian feminists who are supposedly gone to university. Although I sometimes wonder if these women are educated, these lesbian feminists are actually educated, because the university they seem to be going to seems to be churning out them at poor quality degrees, But it says here, it is true that local women are not entering the inner sanctum and going close to the deity, but these women are under pressure from men who want to retain the regressive practice. Tough. I mean, if they're married and their husbands and their boyfriends, you can't be there 24 hours. Well, you can be, but it seems you can't be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to force people, um, to change. You just can't do it. And this is what's pissing them off. Uh, this particular bitch has said she got calls from local women who claimed they were being prevented by members of the family not to break the tradition. We don't know whether that's true or not. She's just could be just using, remember in feminism, propaganda and damn right lows are accepted as to push the narrative. Simple as that. It's accepted and expected. The local men refuted the bitch's charge of pressuring the women. The women from the entire district do not want to spoil the sanctity of the place. While we have not asked anyone to either go or not to go, the local women prefer not to climb the platform, said temple trustee. The lesbian feminist bitch and other activists plan to visit the temple on April the 8th, when their crusade completes a year. So again, they're looking for trouble. They're going there. They know they've got the protection of the government, because the government is going to force these locals who can't do anything generally, but to allow these outside bitches to walk in and do whatever they want. We are aware that basically, come on, grow some balls. You need to be like Russia. Putin wouldn't allow this kind of nonsense. Putin wouldn't allow. I think they jailed some members of the Pussy Riot. I don't think they particularly enjoyed their time in prison. Uh, Tough. We are aware that it's a huge task to change the mindset of the people. On April, for the brainwash is what they should be saying. To brainwash the mind of these people. That's what these feminist lesbians are really trying to do. On April the 8th last year, we initiated the process to bring equality among men and women. There's no such thing as equality amongst men and women. This year, we will be visiting the shrine, visiting again to start another campaign against worsening sex ratio. Okay. She said it would take years to change the society's mindset. The trouble for you is, if it's going to take years to change the society's mindset, you could end up getting yourself killed. It's as simple as pure as that. I won't have any sympathy. Things will change in its own way. People don't like change. People don't like change. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how sophisticated you. That's human nature. If things change, um, in a manner and in a way that is slow and reasonable, people will change. But if you force and consistently force, people just regress even further from where you're trying to push them forward to. Traditionally, women for years have been prohibited from climbing the platform where the idol is installed at the temple. The activists, led by some stupid twat, campaigned against the issue, which led the temple trust to allow women entering into inner sanctum. So after this bitch here went into this particular area, she spearheaded a similar movement at somewhere else, another temple, and another temple. So this is really, to be honest with you, this is employment for this lesbian feminist bitch, uh, where where the trust authorities finally had to allow women to enter inside inside the sanctum. Um, so this bitch was detained along with her supporters before. So good, you got to suffer for your cause, whether you like it or not. Initially, this particular lesbian and other activists entering Vita Guti faced stiff opposition from the temple trustees. However, the temple authorities eventually buckled under pressure of large support for the crusade. And unlike this other area, the local women regularly visit the inner sanctum of the temple. That's fine. That's entirely. But there will be a consistent um, hatred of these people. You can guarantee it. A consistent, and they don't blame them, because when you force people, vehemently force people. I mean, look at affirmative action. Do you think people still? I mean, um, affirmative action is forced in universities where in America, where Chinese Asians are discriminated against. They have to get a much higher score than everybody, even the white students, before they can go to university. That's wrong. That's affirmative action. That's so unfair to these students. Um, and otherwise, supposedly they would overtake the university. There must be a hell of a lot of Asian guys who've been refused, going to universities because of these, feminists, because these universities are now feminized. So, you know, so they go elsewhere to make their money and their fortunes, because these are clever guys. They will make their money regardless. They don't need these feminized shithole universities. Um, you know, you don't need a degree to make good money. You don't need it. I mean, what's his name? Look at Facebook. Look at John Carpenter, the great film director. Look at Bill Gates. I think Steve Jobs. All dropped out of university. Didn't need it. However, the temple authorities, blah 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 blah. So, when women entered so that's 2015. A woman climbed the platform and performed what's to Lord Shahay, sparking outrage amongst villagers and temple trustees. Later, the idol was purified. This was in 2015, so this um, lesbian bitch jumped on probably. Then in November of 2016, the temple committee suspended 7 security and observed in the village to protest the incident or whatever. I can't remember. I don't know what they're going about. I think what they did, there must have been security, and then they did a protest or whatever about what happened with this girl. So in 2016, activists led by this particular lesbian bitch tried to break decades-old tradition that prohibited women from entering sanctum of the presiding god. They were stopped by police 70 kilometers away from the temple. March 2016, Bombay High Court asked the particular government to ensure women are not denied entry. The HC, while hearing a petition filed by associate can't pronounce these names, ruled that entering temple is a fundamental right of women. It's not a fundamental right. Tradition states that they can't. Okay, and to force it on these villagers who generally say no, they don't want them to enter, is wrong, and that the government, the and that government is duty bound to protect this right. It's not a right; it's one that you've just made up, you bunch of bastards. And in 2016, Temple finally allowed the entry into the sanctum. You see, people want to force people into their way of thinking. And when that is done, seriously, there is a bitter taste left in the mouth of people. And that's the reason why people turn on other people. Personally, I don't think this is going to work out in the long term. So, mobs attack women. They're going to keep going down there. But I think what's going to happen is something will give. And I think we're just seeing the beginning. Something will get worse than this, I believe. But anyway, I've just said my said. Thanks for listening.